Hey guys, welcome back. So recently we looked at the sets of Spartan armor that are designed both directly and also indirectly to counter the Flood. So today I figured that we'd look at the weapons that we would usually expect to see being used alongside these counter Flood armor sets. Weapons that are designed, once again, both directly and also indirectly to counter the Flood. But before we start, I just gotta say a massive thank you for 200,000 subscribers. That number on its own is absolutely mind-blowing, but to say that we reached it during the biggest content drought that Halo has ever had is honestly just insane. Thank you so much, guys. I cannot put it into words how thankful I am. The official iconic Hidden Xperia merch, the shirts, will be dropping very, very soon. The final design was just finished like 2 days ago, and I gotta say, it looks pretty fucking good. So thank you so much again, fellas. I really do appreciate it. And let's get on with the show. Alrighty, let's begin with the UNSC weapons, starting with humanity's most iconic counter-Flood weapon, the shotgun. Shotguns have been one of the most commonly used weapons against all forms of zombie in countless different movie and gaming universes, dating all the way back to the 60s, and the Flood are no exception to this. What makes the shotgun so effective is the velocity, power, and spread of the pellets that are ejected when the weapon is fired. Each shell that is loaded into the shotgun contains, on average, around 15 individual pellets that are fired from the barrel in a wide spread. At long range, this makes the gun practically fucking useless, but at close range, when all of the pellets hit their target, they tear directly through the rotten biomass of the Flood with ease, rendering a combat form's body damaged beyond use, often even killing the infection form inside the chest at the same time, and destroying other forms like pure forms and carrier forms without issue. Now, the rest of the useful human weapons all share one important trait: their use of excessive heat. Now, the flamethrower is obviously the most obvious choice in this category because, I mean, well, it goes without saying, it literally spews fire. It works by igniting a stream of a volatile semi-liquid fuel, just like a standard flamethrower works in real life, and the fire that it emits burns through the rotten flesh of the Flood form. For pure forms, the fire burns their biomass and basically cooks them to death, leaving a lovely smell. And in the case of a combat form, it either melts the flesh in its entirety, destroying the host body, or it damages it enough to kill the infection form inside and then weaken the body. However, given that it can sometimes take quite a while for living combat forms to burn to death, the best use, arguably for the flamethrower, is to burn the bodies of potential hosts, whether they're dead combat forms or just dead bodies that are yet to be infected. Destroying them with fire is the only way to ensure that they don't come back again and again and again and again. The Spartan laser is also extremely effective against the Flood for similar reasons. The powerful laser beam that's emitted when it's fired can burn right through nanocomposites, hardened steel, and also many other forms of reinforced metal, so the rotting flesh of the Flood is no problem for this bad boy. Honestly though, I could see Spartan lasers not really being used that often against the Flood because they're big, they're heavy, they take a while to charge up and fire, and they're clearly not meant to be used against infantry. Instead, I could see them being used really effectively against Flood hives. Now, we saw in Halo Wars that Anders Sparrowhawks, the sort of modified Hornets, had modified Spartan lasers mounted on their nose that had a really short overheat period, much shorter than the regular laser, which would be really, really useful in large numbers when dealing with Flood hives, large-scale Flood outbreaks, or maybe even grave mines. And finally, for the UNSC weapons, I want to cover pretty much any form of explosive. From frag grenades to spankers to grenade launchers, pretty much anything explosive is super useful in combating the Flood, again for the most obvious of reasons. The heat that's emitted from the explosion is enough to completely destroy combat forms, carrier forms, and even pure forms. Obviously, some explosives are more effective than others, and a rocket is always going to do more damage against a tank form than a regular grenade, but all explosions are effective for the same reason. This is very likely why the UNSC use WMDs if a Spartan is infected by the Flood. Not even an infection form that's burrowed inside a set of super strong Mjolnir could withstand the heat of a nuclear warhead. Okay, so let's move on to the Covenant weapons that are useful against the Parasite. Now, given that the elites and humans are now allies post-war, we can expect that weapons are sometimes shared among the factions. I mean, we've already seen it with Olympia Vale, so I can assume that Spartan containment fire teams often use some of these weapons when they go on operations. So, the first, and again, the most obvious, is the Energy Sword. The magnetic field generators that are located in the hilt of the weapon emit two extremely sharp blades of superheated plasma that can cut through practically any material, flood biomass most definitely included. Despite it only being useful in immediately short range, the Energy Sword is always superior to the shotgun in that range because, quite obviously, you don't need to reload it. If a Spartan was surrounded by the Flood, all he'd have to do is just keep swinging and swinging the sword, and given how easily it cuts through rotten flesh, its battery also depletes a lot slower, so all in all, I would honestly say the sword is the most effective weapon to use against the Flood, bar none, and given the current human-elite relations, it wouldn't shock me if Spartan Flood containment fire teams took them on missions. Please, 343, if you ever make an animated short or small movie about these teams, give one of them a sword. It's just too perfect. Other forms of plasma-based weaponry are also extremely effective, for reasons similar to heat-based weaponry. The super hot plasma fired from plasma rifles and plasma pistols, in particular, causes immense third-degree burns to humans, and has been known to even burn straight through unshielded Mjolnir armor. So with that in mind, just imagine what it would do to Flood biomass. Despite them really only ever being useful against the Flood in Halo Combat Evolved, the bolts of plasma that are fired by these weapons would realistically, in universe, melt directly through Flood forms with ease. With this in mind, if the Flood do come back in Halo Infinite, then I really hope that plasma weapons are as canonically effective against them as they should be. Now, there's a group of weapons that I actually think fall under the radar quite often that would actually be really, really useful in certain situations, and these are the brute weapons, notably the Brute Shot and the Spiker. Now, all these weapons are outfitted with extremely sharp blades that make them effective in close quarters, and as shown by Halo 2 and also Halo 3, this also applies to the Flood. The Brute Shot's massive curved blade underneath it can cut straight through a combat form with ease, and it does significant damage to pure forms as well. Maybe it's the extremely strong tungsten carbide that the blades are made from, the same material as armor-piercing rounds, or maybe it's something else entirely, but either way, these blades would actually be extremely useful against the Flood in close quarters combat, on the off chance that an energy sword wasn't available, of course. And finally for the Covenant, we have yet another brute invention, the Firebomb Grenade. This bad boy does exactly what it says on the tin. It's essentially a Molotov cocktail, but a lot more lethal. You throw it at a target, and the casing converts to a liquid, burning at roughly 2,200 degrees centigrade, applying to a roughly 15-foot radius. Now, for painstakingly obvious reasons, these grenades are super effective against the Flood, especially large hordes of them, given how big its fire radius is. And so, the final collection of weapons are Forerunner weapons, which, as you can imagine, are far, far more effective at countering the Flood than any other form of weaponry. The Sentinel Beam, the first of them, was designed as the primary weapon of the Aggressor Sentinels, which were created to guard Forerunner facilities, notably from the Flood. They were designed purely to counter the Flood, and thus, so was their weapon. The Sentinel Beam fires a continuous beam of superheated gold or blue particles, which directly cut through flesh, bone, and metal. Really, not much needs to be said about the beam. It was built for one purpose and one purpose only, destroying the Parasite and all possible hosts for it. And at that, it does a pretty damn good job. And finally, of course, we have the Promethean weapons, the light rifle, the suppressor, the scattershot, etc, etc. Most of these weapons were created before the Forerunners faced the Flood, but there's a reason they were given to the Promethean Knights, soldiers that were literally created to save the Forerunners from the Flood. Their ability to disintegrate their targets made them extremely useful at both killing the Flood and also entirely destroying their bodies, which prevented reanimation and made larger forces much easier to fight. Each individual Promethean weapon was also designed for different Flood encounters and also for different enemy types, making them a lot more specialized from their human and Covenant counterparts. The Dying Star variant of the light rifle that fires the adhesive explosives was designed to be used against the tougher Flood pure forms. The suppressor's efficiency in close range made them the most favoured tool for boarding and recapturing flood-controlled ships. The scattershot was created and used by foreigner-builder security forces that were helping to evacuate planets under assault by the Flood, and the Loathsome Thing variant with the longer magazine saw use destroying Flood from 100,000 different hives. The incineration cannon was used to strategically purge infected sites, with Prometheans favouring the cannon when conducting operations believed to contain either a Flood hive or a Gravemind. The River of Light variant was the culmination of anti-Flood technological improvements that ultimately, sadly, proved useless. And finally, we have arguably the most interesting of all of the Promethean weapons, the Binary Rifle. It was designed as a counter-Flood sniper rifle, and was used by warrior servants to assassinate emerging key mines, likely including things like the Juggernaut, and later on during the war, it became a necessary tool in combating the ever-growing number of pure forms. So, they are all of the weapons most useful against the Flood, both directly and also indirectly designed to counter the ever-spreading parasite. Now, if there's ever a Flood outbreak on our precious planet Earth, you know exactly what to use to defend her. Alrighty, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I want to give a big thank you to Ardent, Tomahawk, Evan, Momo, Shikata, Mjolnir, Matthew, Pierre, Tony, Jim, Zack, Theo, Michael, Jack Madden, Eric Brown, Sam Grafton, Bryn98, Hayden Woods, Gareth Davies, and Matthew Brown for supporting me over on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and thank you again insurmountably for 200,000 subs. That is such a crazy number. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.